Welcome back to Copper Star Precision, the channel dedicated to getting you more points at your competitive shooting matches. I kind of hinted at it during the last strategy videos for the August Course of Fire, but I have a new, sort of new, open division rifle. So it's the same barreled action from Desert Precision Gunworks. Kenny does amazing work over there. One of his earlier builds. The new ones are even better, and he's coming out with a new action. But tried and true, gun absolutely hammers, but now it's time to get it into a professional chassis. So this is going to be all about the MPA Masterpiece Arms Vanquish chassis for the CZ457, relatively new to the market. Probably one of the more premium price options. I think between some of the big players, you have MDT around the $1,000 mark. You've got MPA closer to the $1,700 mark. Wooks is up there, 1,300. And then there's the Vision Pro chassis and the new L3i Hive chassis that are inletted for the CZ457. So definitely on the more premium end of chassis. So you're going to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, and how that weird new innovative side magazine catch works. So let's jump right into it. All right, well, here it is in all its glory, the Masterpiece Arms Vanquish chassis for the CZ457. Now, just full disclosure, I bought this with my own money. I did use my PRS members discount, which is available on their members page, but basically paid full price for this chassis, the night vision bridges, which we'll get into in a second, and the barricade stop. So Masterpiece Arms does not know that I'm making this video, and no money was exchanged. But with that out of the way, I think what most people are interested in is probably this new mechanism for releasing the magazine, which is pretty cool. But let's talk about what I didn't like. This is the most money I've ever spent on a chassis, bar none. And I've had a lot of different chassis for the CZ457. I've had the Gray Birch chassis, I've had a Wooks, I've had a PDC Customs, and obviously the stock configuration, factory, MTR, all that kind of stuff. What you do get with this system is customizability, but what I was kind of upset with when I first received it was kind of the quality control, attention to detail. Now, the Cerakote job, fantastic. It was just all the little screws and stuff felt like they were put in hastily and not with a lot of care. And what I mean by that is as follows. So the Cerakote job for the barricade stop, there are 4 screws in here. There was a bunch of Cerakote in the threads. So I actually, before I put this in, I took the screws and kind of turned them in a little bit and turned them out just to kind of clear those threads, because it was very difficult to tell whether or not you were cross-threading these 4 screws in the barricade stop down here. And obviously going into aluminum chassis, cross-threading is a nightmare, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing that. There was a little bit of extra Cerakote in there. Not that big a deal, but just little attention to detail. When you're spending this much money, I don't know what my expectations were, but wanted a premium product, got a premium product, but it was little tiny things here and there. My level actually arrived broken. It was cracked, so that used to go in here. I've since taken it out, and a couple other little things like with the adjustable buttstock. Let me zoom in here. It's like little tiny things, attention to detail here. So like these don't sit flush. So I don't know if these need to be smaller, these little retaining clamps, or if you just needed to hog out a little bit more material here. I'm not sure how much this is carried over from other platforms, but the fact that there's a gap right there, I don't know, is that weird and OCD? It just, you figured these would sit flush. It is a nice system because it does retain its spot. However, when I did get it, I'll take this off for a second and show you what I'm talking about. So when you take this out, there are these flats here where like the set screws go into, and like each one of these was completely like cockeyed. So it was like, imagine this way. So the set screw was just going into the round part. So I had to like retime each one of these little posts, and same for the buttstock back here. So there's also flats in here for the set screws to go into, and they were all like just randomly put in there. They weren't timed with where the set screw goes. So like little things like that, and you can see like there's already a little rub mark from these little clamps. So if these need to be a smaller diameter, I don't know, just like little things like that. But that being said, everything is broken until you check it, right? So, I guess some of that is on the user. I just kind of expected things to be a little bit more, in terms of quality control, put together, ready to go out the box. But with that being said, there's a lot of good things about this chassis. Oh, I guess one other major thing that I found was this, I forget what this called. This is the rat system, but it's basically a spigot mount. This was visibly cocked like a couple degrees to the side, and you could kind of tell. So I had to loosen these two screws, and I wanted to make sure that was nice and square, so it's square with the rest of the rifle. So what I did is I borrowed one of these nodal rails from some of my photography equipment. It's just an ARCA adapter. It's photography equipment called a nodal rail, and I got a square up against that, and then tightened down the bolts just to make sure everything was perfectly in line, because I think it was cocked to the left like a couple degrees. So like little tiny things like that, I thought were interesting. I mean, nothing that you couldn't remedy, but I just feel like for what you pay for this chassis, you know, out the box, it should have been a little bit more just once over, you know, quality control. But anyway, that was pretty much all the bad. What's great about this is the level of customizability. And, you know, chassis or stocks are definitely personal preference, but here you have the option to really make it your own. And, you know, I really did appreciate that. So like, for example, this buttstock I actually flipped around because I like a little bit higher shoulder pressure, kind of in line with the cheek rest. So that's totally doable. There's all kinds of holes down here. You can move that around if you want to cant or tilt the butt pad in any way. But really what it comes down to in terms of customizability here is kind of this main interface with the rifle. And I think that's where this rifle shines, is all the different things you can do in this area here with the grip. So when you order this chassis, it comes with your choice of 2 grips. So there is the EVG, Enhanced Vertical Grip, which is this package here. And then you get to choose another grip. You can choose 2 different grips. I just happen to choose the EVG because I've had the EVG on other rifles and I've really liked it. I ended up not going with it this time because I think this 3-piece solution is a little bit better. But they have the EVG, which is, if you're used to this on other rifles, it's a vertical grip with the thumb shelf and like little trigger, keeping your trigger finger at a 90-degree angle. So that was one option I went with. And then I went with the vertical, I believe this is the vertical 3. This is their largest grip. So they have 3 swept versions, which are kind of at an angle, and they have 3 vertical versions. So I have pretty large palms but short fingers, so I wanted something that was a little bit wider this way, and this actually has a pretty nice palm swell on it, which fits my hand nicely. So it's a bigger palm swell than what's on the EVG. But you get that piece, and then you get your choice of sort of gas pedal, thumb rest, whatever you want to call it. So I think this is the middle of the road one. So they have this one kind of follows the angle of the chassis itself. This one's a little bit more upright, and then this is like super upright. So these all come with the chassis. So you pick 2 grips, and then you get all this other stuff. So you get 3 of the thumb shelves, and then you get 4 of these trigger bar things. And really, it's all up to personal preference. So really what the goal here is when you get behind the rifle with the thumb shelf, you know, you basically have this protruding out a little bit, you know, or a medium amount, and or a lot. And so I think this is the 3rd widest, works for me. This is the widest one, it goes out even further. But the idea is that it gets a perfect 90-degree trigger actuation, and it really just sets your hand up in the same exact spot every single time. What's nice, again, is all these accessory slots, so I don't know if they're going to come out with more accessories. I know that a few companies, like this company, make this really nice bracket for the MDT Crush It timer. So this company is called No Sponsor. You can find them online. Really nice, affordable 3D print here, and essentially when you start the stage, you'll be in this position, and then you just transition to your firing position. So it's really easy just to reach and activate the timer there. But I guess what everyone's kind of curious about, and I was curious about, I've seen a couple videos. I know Matt Womfat had a video kind of explaining this system, but this side-loading magazine, which is really interesting. Now, it's not going to work on every magazine. In fact, it's only going to work on the polymer magazines. So you need to have this section here cut out. And I know there are companies that are, if you send them your mags, they can actually put this relief cut into some of their mags, but for example, right out of the box, like the L3i mags will not work. You need this relief cut, because what's going to happen is this is going to actually clip into this section here, like that. So normally, when you have the regular mag release, it's going to actually push against this lip. This is actually clamping in to the side of the magazine, just like that. Now, you don't have to use this system whatsoever. You can use the factory mag well. Just drop that right in here, and there is plenty of space for you to have your normal release. There's a nice cutout here, so you can actually access that. I haven't tested it with the various extended mag releases or anything like that, but it's an option, so you don't have to go with the side magazine release. But I think it's actually really cool, and it's one of the sort of the downsides of the CZ is the somewhat awkward magazine changes. And you see stages with mandatory mag changes or higher round count stages a little bit more frequently. So having that ability to quickly change mags is definitely interesting. As it sits in its stock configuration, once you get this assembled, it's actually very difficult to depress the magazine. So you almost need a button here, and I'm going to show you my solution for that in just a second. But there is a thread here, so they did anticipate this being something that people would want to add, and I think it's almost necessary. And in fact, if you do add a button here, you can actually put this in and then not have to take this out to remove the barreled action, which is nice. One big flaw of this whole system is their magazine well. So here is a factory plastic, hard plastic magazine well. We can kind of get an idea of the flex on this, you know, pushing pretty hard, doesn't flex a lot. Their version, which obviously has this cutout so that the side magazine catch fits in there. It looks like a 3D print, but it is like super bendy. I could probably just snap this with my fingers. So I know one of the major failure points of the CZ rifles is their mag well. Now, it's not a huge problem if you're just going to the range and you're plinking, but if you're at a match and you're doing mag changes and you're ripping mags in and out and all that kind of stuff, these will fail. It's not a question of if, it's when. I've seen ones go down at matches, and I always recommend people get aftermarket ones. So what I did was I took my barreled action and the DI Products aluminum one, and with a Dremel tool, basically cut out a similar thing. So basically, took a template of this and tried to mimic it as best as possible. Does it look pretty? No. Does it function well? Yes. So I feel a lot more confident with the aluminum one in here, lasting a long time. And I know that Modicam Custom Rifles is going to come out with one that's all aluminum, already pre-cut, so you don't have to do it yourself, but I figured why the hell not, just get out the Dremel and go for it. So the way that this works is, essentially it's only 3 parts. There's a pin with a thread on it, and it's just going to simply go down in the top here, like so. And it's going to capture and become the pivot point for the side mag catch, and then there is a spring. So pretty simple. There's a spring, there is a recess right here, and it actually holds the spring really well on its own. Like, I can turn this upside down, it's not going to fall. So that's nice that you don't need 3 hands to do this operation. So basically you're just going to put that in there with the spring, push until you kind of see the hole line up. And then we're gonna push this down until we feel it catch like that. So now it's retained. And then it is a 5/64 hex set on top. So we're just gonna tighten this up. I don't know if there's a torque spec on this, but the good old German Gudentight is probably good enough. So we're just gonna snug that up. So let's look at it in its stock configuration like this. So if I depress this, I actually have to get my finger kind of really in there, and it just barely, if you look at that surface there, is just barely going to clear the magazine. So let's put this guy in here. So if you imagine the magazine fills up all that space, I mean, you really have to push pretty accurately and pretty hard. It is a very stiff spring to get that to clear the magazine, and then What's challenging is that it's not going to be easy to pull out your barreled action. You almost have to come in from the side here, grab this and hold it way far out for this to come out nice and easy. So I think this being threaded, putting a button here is definitely going to be extremely important. So here's a solution that I came up with. So this is threaded 10 by 32. And so what I did is I looked for some cool things on the interwebs, and I'll put this down in the description. So these are thumb screws, and this is what they look like. Kind of cool. Red button. If you saw the thumbnail, you probably saw this is on the rifle. Now the issue, it's not necessarily an issue, but this is actually a little bit thin in terms of this dimension here. So if you put something that's wider than that, it's actually going to catch on the actual chassis itself. So what I did is I actually got some number 10 by 1/4 inch spacers, aluminum spacers. Just regular spacers, right? But what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get put it in a vise, get a file, and just a little bit off each side in order to make sure that it clears. You want this to be the same or less dimension this way. So for example, I'll show you if you put a normal one of these in. So these are 1/4 inch spacers. This is 1/2 inch long, and if you thread this too far down, it's actually going to push against the chassis itself, and it's going to prevent you from even actuating this. So you want something that it has a little bit of a standoff like this, but you don't want a screw so long that it's actually going to prevent this from moving. So let's take a normal spacer that hasn't been modified, and we're just going to screw this in. And then, as you notice, I can't depress this at all because it's bumping up against the chassis. I know it sounds like an obvious point, but I just want you to know what you're getting into before you go down this rabbit hole. So that's why we need this one that's a little bit flattened on both sides, just so it makes that dimension. And it wasn't hard, just to get put it in a vise, get a file, or if you have like a sander, just sand the edges off. So what I like to do is I kind of like to just hold it in place, make sure it's right, and then I actually will depress this all the way and then finish threading it, so I know that it's going to clear both sides as I tension this up. And now it's perfect. And what's the benefit of this is that if you notice, before we were like here, just barely clearing the magazine. Here with enough leverage now, it's fully out, so I can lift out the barreled action without having to remove this piece. So if you're wondering if that's possible, yes, it's possible if you have enough leverage on this piece. So we'll just kind of make that look a little bit better. Tie that up like so. Make sure that still works. Yep. So yeah, we're basically fully clear with the amount of leverage that we have. So again, thumb screw, nice big surface area to release the mag, and some aluminum spacers that you just have to file off a little bit and make sure that it clears the chassis there. So yeah, that's my solution for that problem. I recommend people do the same. I hope they do come out with some nice, offerings from MPA or someone in the industry comes up with a nice solution. This is relatively cheap in DIY, but I thought it worked really well. But it'd be nice to have something kind of polished on there. So yeah, I guess the other thing is weights, right? So if you put weights in here, Gray Ops sells a set of weights that are designed for this chassis, but in the Remington 700 footprint that this chassis normally comes in. And they have, basically, they're a block with like a barrel channel. This action actually sits lower in this chassis than a standard Remington 700. So even if you have a thick barrel or a custom barrel, you're not going to be able to use those weights. My barrel is 1.1 inches straight contour, and it actually cleared the weights in their standard configuration until about like here, and then it would start to rub a little bit. So these channels, I believe, either this is set lower or these channels are cut a little bit deeper on this version of the chassis. So you're not going to be able to use the Gray Ops weight unless you modify them, and that is what I have done. So I'll throw a picture up here of one of the weights in the standard configuration, and then a Diablo saw meant for cutting steel on a circular saw. Very dangerous, but it gets the job done. Obviously, if I had access to a mill, I would just kind of mill those, I don't know if you want to call them like bunny ears, off to make more flat weights. And of course, being Copper Star Precision, we had to make these copper in color. So here is the result. So these are the gray ops weights, and basically you can kind of see like the circular saw marks. Basically put this in the vise, cut off the ears, sand this down a little bit, and we've painted them copper. So now these fit in here nicely, and they just barely are over this lip here, and that's, for my barrel, it's going to be good enough. If you have one of the new crazy, like super thick barrels, I can't promise that it would work. You might have to go a little bit deeper. But basically there are 4 weights in the system, and then there's the special weight that is actually cut out for this spigot mount here. So that's the solution I have come up with, and adding a nice bunch of copper weights in the fore end, and of course it wouldn't be complete without some side weights as well. And again, I usually like really heavy chassis because when I run the trigger cam, I have the scope here with a big 1-pound trigger cam hanging out the back. So Gray Ops also makes these, also painted these copper, and these are specifically for the BA comp fore end, which I believe this is. That's what they call it. And then these versions specifically, they're for the Matrix Pro. So Matrix Pro and Vanquish share this same platform. And so we'll put a set of basically 4 of these across here. And what's nice about these is they have these QD slots, so I'll probably end up putting a sight clutch inside one of these, probably this one, so then I have a place to index my thumb and grab the bag. With the barricade stop, it's going to be super duper stable, or at least that is the hope. So that's kind of the idea there. We'll get this all put back together. Obviously, YouTube doesn't like anything to do with assembling firearms, so we'll skip that part, but you're gonna definitely use your sort of recoil lug in here, your factory recoil lug, and then you've just got your 2 action screws. What is interesting is that unlike the stock configuration, the short action screw now goes in the back and the long one goes in the front, when usually it's reversed. So it's pretty obvious what's going to happen, but just to be aware so you're not confused. So here is the Desert Precision Gunworks Kenny barrel. This is a Schillen ratchet groove barrel that he put together. This was my open gun. It's been on a lot of different chassis. Obviously I was doing base class last season, but we're going back to open. I'm trying out the Timney trigger here. So Timney trigger with the flat face. I used to have curved triggers, but I think with this nice indexing here, it's going to give me a nice vertical, 90-degree exactly on this flat face trigger. So again, this will, once I put the recoil lug, this will go in here, and then you can actually push this back enough so that you can put in the barrel to action without having to remove the mag release, just like that. So that's going to go in here, and yeah, it works pretty well. So unloaded magazine, and I haven't torqued this down or anything, but this will just simply slide right in there, and with that leverage, they eject flawlessly. So you just slap that, grab your other mag, and away we go. This isn't quite lined up yet because obviously I don't have the action screws in there. So, but it's yeah, they fall straight out under gravity. So with that extra leverage of that button, again, I'll leave a link in the description. It's going to be hopefully a really nice setup. So let's grab this out of here. And again, I can remove it without having to remove the side magazine release, which is nice. And for cleaning, I would just take off the, I would probably remove just the buttstock and the cheek rest, and you can get a cleaning rod in there, no problem. So I'm going to get this all buttoned up, and that's pretty much all there is to it. You'll look forward to seeing this in matches, so if you want to see that, make sure you go down, hit the subscribe button down below, leave any questions or comments about the chassis, and yeah, until I see you next time, as always, score more points.